Hey, yo, hey, what the fuck, bro? Critical Drinker just been hitting us back to back to back to back to back to back. This nigga ain't taking no breaks. This nigga needs to take a break. Need to take a rest from all the criticisms and the drinking. Okay, maybe not the drinking, but take a break from the criticizing part and just chill for a minute, dog. Just just chill for a minute. But look, you know what it is. We're gonna get right into this video. But first, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of my future videos. So we're gonna get into this. You already know what it is. I love this series. This is my favorite. These are my favorite videos from the Critical Drinker, hands down, point blank, period. Is the why modern movies suck. I love it because he breaks down every single reason. He breaks it down. You know how it is, and I love to interject like my points and add to his points. I love doing that because I like to think about this stuff myself. I like to talk about this stuff myself, and I'm sure you guys do too. That's why we got the comment section. That's what we got the comment section for, baby. So get down there. I'm gonna be down there too. So let's go. Why modern movies suck? Nobody can stay dead. That is a big problem. There's really no such thing as a real death scene anymore. Nobody dies. Nobody dies. You can't get rid of a character. The emotions just aren't there because when it's a risky situation, when it's a high risk situation, there's never really any risk beyond, there's no risk because you know it's not actually going to happen, or if it does, they're just going to like bring them back somehow. It really doesn't matter. I'm still not sad about Tony's death in Avengers Endgame because you know Marvel can't survive without him. Look at Marvel now. You know he's coming back. I've known it since day one. Like, so yeah, that's the reason. But yeah, let's get right into the video. Thank you guys so much for checking out this video. Like, subscribe, hit the bell notification. Let's go. Take it away, Crit.
In life. Benjamin Franklin once famously quipped that there are only two certainties in life: death and taxes. And that's what I'm here to talk about today: the shocking rise in personal income tax rates over the past 10 years.
What?
Sorry, death. Specifically, death in media. Surely the ultimate and most permanent conclusion to any character's story. The end of everything they are, and everything they ever could be. Everything they might have said and thought. Every task they might have accomplished. Every life they might have touched. It all ends when they draw their final breath. And just like in real life, their passing often leaves behind an aching void of emptiness and grief that other characters, and even the audience themselves, must struggle to come to terms with. At least it used to. Now,
you see how poetically he put that shit? Like, it takes skill. It takes skill as a writer to do that. See, that's why I don't make these types of videos. I wanted to, but it takes too much like articulation. I don't got that kind of articulatories in my brain. I don't got that kind of articulation skills. That's why I love the drinker, man.
the death of a major character is treated more like a passing inconvenience that can be easily fixed whenever the plot needs it to happen, or a hack writer wants to jangle some shiny keys in front of the audience for a bit of cheap nostalgia, or the studio decides they want to squeeze a bit more money out of a once popular legacy character. Whatever the reason, it all adds up to the same problem. Nobody stays fucking dead anymore, and that creates some very obvious additional problems that we'll get into later. Believe that. But for now at least, let's consider some of the most popular and convenient paths for character resurrection. I mean, we'll leave out the absolute chads who just bring people back to life with no explanation whatsoever.
Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Palpatine returned. Palpatine returned.
Probably the least damaging method is to work more or less within the confines of the fictional world that you've created, usually when you've got highly advanced science and technology to fall back on. It'll definitely stretch the audience's suspension of disbelief, but with luck it can be done without completely breaking your own narrative rules. Like the Matrix Resurrections, for example. Remember Neo and Trinity? Remember how they both totally died at the end of Matrix Revolutions when Trinity took a steel girder to the gut and Neo got assimilated by Agent Smith, and then his his brain exploded or something and he turned into sci-fi space Jesus. I mean, it wasn't high art or anything, but it got the job done, I suppose. But what happens when you're a studio desperate to squeeze a little more money out of an old franchise, but you desperately need your two main actors to be involved again? Fuck it, let's just say that the machines fixed their bodies up, brought them back to life, and plugged them right back into the Matrix
Just
like nothing
say something
happens.
that somewhat
Genius.
fits,
Or how about
like,
Colonel Quaritch
even
from
though it doesn't
Avatar?
make sense.
Remember him? Probably not,
stupid
because
as
apparently half the world's entire population went to see that movie, but most of them could barely tell you a single thing about it today apart from the blue people were cool and the planet looked nice and that made my brain do a happy. But the point here is that Quaritch ultimately got turned into a human pincushion and ended up very dead as a result. But what do you do when it's 15 years later and you need an antagonist for your sequel and you can't be arsed coming up with a new one? Fuck it, let's just say he downloaded his brain into an Avatar body off screen, despite the fact that his entire character was driven by his complete and utter contempt for the Na'vi, and he absolutely would never have agreed to such a procedure, and bingo, he's back in the game like nothing happens. Fuck off, film. I mean, shit, man, sometimes we don't even need to wait for a sequel. We can just bring characters back to life in the very next scene. Like in Star Trek Into Darkness, when Captain Kirk sacrifices his life to fix the Enterprise warp core by kicking it until it starts working again.
He can't be serious.
Honestly, if you want a single moment that pretty much exemplifies the attitude of modern Star Trek, then here it is. Anyway, because J.J. Abrams only knows how to repurpose stuff that other people have already done far better, the whole scene is basically trying to mirror the death of Spock in The Wrath of Khan. But whereas that scene was poignantly handled and the audience was given an entire movie to process the grief of his death, and Kirk ultimately had to sacrifice his career, his ship, and even his own son to get Spock back, Into Darkness brings Kirk back to life literally minutes later by injecting him with Dirk Benedict Bundersnatch's magical Superman blood, which can apparently cure just about any disease or ailment, up to and including death itself. Damn, man, I sure hope they get a sample of that so that they
So that's not a fucking disease, man. You're dead. You fucking dead. I never watched this. I'm not into Star Trek, so I never watched this. So this is new to me, but that sounds crazy. Okay. Okay.
can basically prevent any disease ever, instead of just forgetting about it the moment it's accomplished the one thing that the plot needs it for.
Fuck.
Another very I sure hope they get any disease or ailment, up to and including death itself. Damn, man, I sure hope they get a sample of that so that they can basically prevent any disease ever, instead of just forgetting about it the moment it's accomplished the one thing that the plot needs it for.
Fuck.
Another variation of the techno-jargon bullshit approach is to use the magical bullshit approach instead. Like in Wonder Woman 1984, where Diana uses the magical dildo crystal thing that grants wishes to bring Steve Trevor back from the dead. And for the purposes of this video, we'll just ignore the fact that Steve is actually inhabiting the body of a completely innocent bystander who absolutely didn't give permission for any of this stuff to happen to him, and
Yeah,
couldn't
that was
consent
pretty
when
weird.
Diana decides to have sex with him, because I guess stuff like this is morally and ethically fine when a woman does it. Anyway, the goal of the writers was once again to bring back a popular character that had already been killed off because they're so fucking lacking in anything even resembling imagination that all they could think to do was replicate the relationship dynamic of the previous film, thus making his sacrifice in that movie completely and utterly pointless. Another approach, which is possibly the most destructive in terms of its far-reaching plot repercussions, is using time travel and or alternate timelines to bring dead characters back to life. I mean, how many times have the Terminator movies used
yeah.
branching timelines to wheel out an increasingly saggy and decrepit Arnold Schwarzenegger to do his T-800 thing again? A role that he hasn't been able to convincingly play since the 1990s. And each time they do it, they have to ask the audience to conveniently forget whatever happened in the previous films because they've just been overwritten. Terminator Genesis effectively cancelled out the events of, well, basically the entire franchise up until that point, whereas Dark Fate asked us to pretend that everything after Terminator 2 never actually happened, while trying to replace it with a storyline that was infinitely worse in every possible way. It's a bit like going on a first date that's not really working out, and instead of just leaving, you burn down the entire restaurant and everyone inside it. Or Avengers Endgame, which suddenly threw in a time travel machine that allowed the writers to bring not one, but two major characters back to life, not only making their deaths in the previous movie completely meaningless, but opening the door to much bigger problems, like, why don't you use a time machine to recruit entire armies of superheroes from different timelines to counter any possible threat you could ever come up against? Why not do this every time someone dies or something goes mildly wrong? Why not go forward in time to procure advanced weapons and technology that can totally help you in the present? Why haven't other people and factions invented time travel as well? Why isn't there a fucking massive universal arms race for such world?
Yeah, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief for that kind of stuff. Like when it comes to time travel or multiversal, all that kind of stuff. Like all of these questions immediately come into play, and you pretty much have to suspend your disbelief for all of them, because there's no way to like explain away all of these possibilities. Come on.
Shattering technology. Questions like these will simply never end because time travel is the ultimate narrative can of worms. Once you've opened it, there's no logical way to close it again, and it's only going to grow until it consumes your entire fictional universe, invalidating every plot point and destroying even the illusion of stakes and consequences. The final method is a word that I've come to utterly despise over the past couple of years, a word that's largely responsible for speeding up the downfall of modern superhero movies. A word called multiverses. Basically, it's the writing equivalent of playing a video game in sandbox mode, where you can spawn in any character, situation, location, or item at will. Want to bring back a dead character played by the same actor, or one from a totally different version of your IP? No problem, just multiverse them into existence, and you barely even have to come up with a justification, because who even cares, really? The fans certainly don't, they just want to see different versions of their favourite characters interacting with each other, making jokes and fighting bad guys. It's the movie equivalent of watching a little kid smash together their G.I. Joe and He-Man toys. It doesn't really make any sense, but it's entertaining at least from a novelty point of view. I mean, Spider-Man No Way Home at least did a decent job with the concept, mostly because the characters were handled with a hint of respect, there was a compelling emotional core driving things forward, and the movie knew to keep the narrative relatively contained and grounded. The problem is that just like with time travel, it opened the floodgates to a gigantic tidal wave of shit to flow out into cinemas. Suddenly everyone was jumping on the multiverse bandwagon because it was a fun gimmick, and when you're out of actual serious creative ideas, gimmicks are basically all you've got left. That's why we had Michael Keaton's Batman taking on CGI space aliens in a desert in the middle of the day, or Doctor Strange fighting an evil version of himself with a third eye for some reason, or Kang and this fucking floating potato threatening to conquer all of existence. It's what happens when one good idea gets hijacked by a bunch of useless hacks desperate to exploit the next big thing before everyone else gives up and moves on. And that, dear viewer, is the fate that awaits so many movies who try this kind of shit, because the obvious result of routinely bringing dead characters back to life with the most flimsy justifications is that nothing that happens carries any weight anymore, because it can all be undone whenever the writers feel like it. Whether it's through some contrived scientific or magical bullshit, alternate timelines overwriting past events, or different realities merging together, it all adds up to the same basic problem. Nothing matters anymore, so there's no reason to get invested in any of it.
Exactly, and that's the problem with so many movies on so many different levels. And it's the thing about this series is that he talks about a trillion different things that kind of accumulate in all these movies to make them just trash as fuck. Like bro, um, yeah, it's definitely a big issue. I can't tell you like that's probably one of the quickest ways to get me to not care about a movie is when it's like the rules of the universe, they just don't make sense. That's like the quickest way to get me to not give a damn. That's the quickest way to get me to not give a damn about your universe. Um, yeah, bro. Like, and when you do something like that, when you do something like this, right, it just shows how little respect you have for your own story, for your own universe. It just shows that you're just you just fucking suck at everything, and you're a bitch. Like, I don't know, makes me not even want to care. Like, just a bitch. I don't know what else to call you.
bit. If your favourite character dies, so what? There's no reason to feel bad because they'll probably be back in the sequel. If the villain gets defeated, what difference does it make? Because they'll return for payback sooner or later. It becomes nothing more than a crutch for writers who can't stand on their own 2 feet and come up with new original ideas to move a narrative forwards. Because why take a chance on that when you can just bring back recognisable things that were once popular and leech off the success of other people's hard work? The end result is a kind of creative inertia, like a car spinning its wheels in the mud, splattering shit everywhere without actually making any forward progress. Combine this with the over-reliance on sequels, reboots and remakes, and we're fast becoming a culture mired in stagnation, recycling inferior copies of old ideas and properties with declining skill and passion. The stories we tell ourselves now have become simple commodities, as disposable and forgettable as a fast food lunch, rather than actual artistic endeavours with something meaningful to say. Hollywood might be able to resurrect any character that they've bought the legal rights to, but the one thing they can't bring back to life is the interest of their own audience. And I think this year they're gonna learn that lesson in the hardest way possible. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.
Alright, man. That was cool. Alright, man. That was cool. Critical Drinker, he killed that shit, bro. I don't even have anything really to add on top of it. Like, this is one of the more straightforward fucking why modern movie sucks. This is one of the more straightforward entries into the series. There's not really much to add to it. It's really simple. It's pretty basic. It's like, just don't break your own story. Don't break your own universe by doing this kind of stupid shit. But they do it anyway. I don't fucking know. Like and subscribe. Peace.
You're spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.